Are you interested in working at any one of these FAANG companies? And let's just say you don't have a software engineering background and hence looking for all the non-tech roles available at these tech giants. Well, don't you worry, I got you. In this video, I will be covering how I ended up getting a non-technical job at a FAANG company with no tech experience. Good day guys, it's Slack here. If you're new to the channel, I'm Lack. I make videos on personal finance, entrepreneurship, and career in general. This video will act as a perfect guide for people who are early in their career, or let's just say people who are thinking of changing industry, as I will be sharing with you guys my exact strategy through which I landed a job at a tech company without any technical background. Now let's get straight into the value. So before we get into all the nitty-gritty details of how I actually found that particular job, let's look into my background, which actually played a major role in me being successful all throughout my interview stages. So basically, I studied software engineering as my undergrad degree here in Sydney, Australia. By the end of the first year of my uni, I had a very strong gut feeling that I would not be working as a software engineer purely because I didn't really enjoy sitting behind a desk and coding all day long. So lucky for me, I got this clarity early on, but then I still ended up completing my degree in order to just have that piece of paper that ended up costing me $50,000, but that's a whole different story altogether. Let's be honest, when you're not super passionate about thing which you're doing, you don't tend to do good at it. So what I mean is I didn't really end up scoring any of the high marks or didn't get much distinctions all throughout my courses. However, by the end of fourth year, I finished with a 73 VAM, which is still pretty decent if you think about how much effort I put in and the result I got at the end. And now keeping my academic background aside, I actually went on to do quite a few internships or part-time jobs all throughout my uni. And through these jobs and different internships and maybe even different entrepreneurial ventures, that's how I was able to actually gain the skills and experience which is required to land a non-technical job at any one of these big tech companies. So basically all throughout uni, I went on to do different sales and marketing roles. So my first gig was actually working at a local real estate agency here in Sydney, and I was basically working for them part-time, selling houses for them and putting properties on rent. So I was working as a sales and leasing consultant. From that particular experience, I actually got a sales internship for one of the big builders here in Sydney, and I worked there for 1 whole year, managed to get more transferable skills, which actually refined my soft skills, which are quite essential when it comes to getting a non-technical role. So now that I had 2 different experiences within the sales and marketing space, I leveraged all of my experience and then I went on to intern at a big 4 consulting company. So after working pretty hard over the 4 months during my internship, I managed to secure a graduate offer. This graduate role would basically start as soon as I would finish my uni degree. So all throughout my final year, I kept it pretty chill as I'd already secured a job post my graduation. So by the end of uni, I actually had 3 different kinds of experiences when it came to professional work or the corporate world, you may say. However, at the same time, in my final 2 years of uni, I actually went on to start my very own e-commerce business. And let me be honest with you, the most learning I had all throughout in the 4 years was actually through this business which I ran from 0 to 1. I started an e-commerce dropshipping store, quite stereotypical on Shopify, and then I converted it into a branded store, which then I ran for almost 2 years and basically managed everything from operations, supply chain, social media marketing, customer service, and finally scaling this business. So after having done all these different kinds of gigs, I came to realize where my passion lied, at least for that point in time. And then I basically decided that, hey, now is the right time to go back into the corporate world, work at any one of these big tech companies and learn from them. So in a nutshell, I basically had experience working at a big 4 consulting company. I had experience in sales and marketing. And finally, I also ran my own entrepreneurial venture. And I feel like these 3 different roles were the key things which I spoke about in my interview process. I was applying for these big tech companies. So now moving on to the second part of this video, in which we'll be discussing the application process and my interview experience. I would say, in my opinion, this was one of the most hardest things I practically did. And let me expand on that and why exactly it was hard for me personally. I basically started applying for tech jobs in a non-technical space right from the start of 2023 January, and I was able to secure my job in December 2023. So practically it took me 12 freaking months to get the job which I really wanted. And there were quite a few reasons behind this. In the current tech market, firstly, there are not many jobs out there for early level professionals. Most jobs which are actually online were looking for people who had 3 to 5 years worth of experience, which I obviously didn't have. And finally, I personally feel the amount of non-technical jobs they have at these big tech companies here in Australia is quite limited. Basically, everyone is competing for a fixed amount of roles, hence making it even more harder. But in my opinion, what worked the best for me was the fact I actually went out of my comfort zone and started going to these tech networking events. So if you don't know already, the city you might be in might have some tech meetups, and that's where you'll find all these tech bros, which actually makes it quite easier for you to enter those little circles, and you might actually meet people who might be hiring or looking for someone down the line potentially. I'm not recommending you guys to go to the networking events purely for the sake of begging for a job. It's more about getting to know people in that particular space with who you can bounce off your ideas, and let's just say if you click off with any one of those blokes, you never know, down the line they might be the ones who are referring you. Second key actionable step which I took, I basically went on to refine my resume every single week or every single month based on the job I was applying for. As there were a limited amount of jobs which are out there, I made sure that I was customizing my resume one by one, and to be honest, it took a lot of time, but with the help of all these different AI tools, my life was slightly more easier. So by the end, I had 5 different template resumes, and then I would pick one of them and then modify it based on the job I was applying for. So my one tip for you guys would be, don't just copy and paste one resume across all the different kinds of jobs. Put some effort into it. Actionable item number 3, preparing for your interviews. I would say from the start of 2023 all the way till December 2023, I would have done more than 35 interviews. I had a Google spreadsheet going of all the different interviews I did, how I felt after the interview. So I would jot down some quick notes on my personal reflections, and finally the outcome. For the first 34, knowing that I got rejected for all of them, I would basically then reach out to the recruiter or the hiring manager, basically anyone who interviewed me, for some feedback. And let me be honest with you guys, 50% of the time, the people didn't bother getting back to me with any constructive feedback. So then I based my learning off the initial notes I had taken right after the interview. So my recommendation to you guys would be, anytime you do an interview, make sure you jot down some notes on how you think you went, things which you could have done better, because right after the interview, this should only take you a couple of minutes, and trust me, a couple of days down the line, once you get a rejection email or an approval email, you actually know what things you need to improve on, even if the interview decides to ghost you. And now moving on to preparing for these interviews, I'll be very honest with you guys, the more interviews you do, the better off you are. In my personal opinion, I would prepare for my interview mainly the night before the actual thing, so that everything remained fresh in it. And I would highly recommend that you guys check out communities like Reddit, Glassdoor. That's where they actually put in the sample interview questions. Those were asked to people when they applied for that particular role, so that you have a brief understanding of what might be asked to you in the interview. And I'm pretty sure by now you have heard multiple other people talk about this strategy called STAR technique. I would go about preparing for all of my behavioral interviews using this STAR method, in which you have to talk about the situation you were in, the task at hand, the action you took, and the result that came out of your action. So in my opinion, when we are actually applying for non-technical jobs, they have a strong focus on behavioral style questions. For me personally, 3 interviews of mine were actually behavioral style interviews, so I really had to put some time and effort into thinking about different scenarios before I actually went to the interview. And now let's talk about the most crucial step in this entire process of landing a non-tech job at one of these FAANG companies. And this thing is, drum rolls please, being consistent. I know this sounds cliche, but let me be honest with you guys. If I had given up by the end of the 2nd or 3rd month, I don't think I'd have gotten my job in the month of December. Let's put this into perspective, right? The amount of people who are actually applying for these non-technical jobs such as product management, sales and marketing, business development, operations, strategy are quite a lot. There's a big pool of people who are wanting these jobs at these glorified tech startups or tech giants so they can succeed in career down the line. And to be honest, all the recruiters at these big companies and these startups already know that. That's why they are so picky when it comes to hiring the right candidate. So let's just say if you get rejected from your so-called dream role, make sure not to feel too bad about it for a very long period of time and completely stop taking action from that point in time. Let me share a quick story. I applied for the world's largest food delivery app. I had actually went through to the final round of the interview process, and guess what? I had actually in my mind started imagining what it would feel like to be working there. And to my surprise, I came to realize that I had been rejected in the final round of interview, and I was gutted for literally 3 weeks. And in those 3 weeks, I applied for 0 jobs, basically did nothing towards the advancement of my career. What I learned in that little phase was that yes, it's okay for us to feel gutted or disappointed once we get rejected from these interviews, especially knowing that amount of effort we have put in to be there. But let's be true to ourselves that hey, that's not the end of the world. There are quite a few options out there. Even in this tight market, our thing is to just keep our head head down and working hard. And I know by saying all of this, I sound like a motivational speaker, but to be honest, guys, this ideology was what got me through this interviewing process, as I basically would have given up by the end of first month. So to sum it up, getting a non-technical job at a tech company might seem very difficult at the start, but once you start taking the right steps and following the right path, it's actually not that hard if you think about it. In my personal opinion, if you start networking with the right people at the right time, start refining your resume or start working on your soft skills, and finally keep on practicing your different interview skills, prepare yourself for different styles of questions, and I don't think it should be too hard for you to land your dream role at any one of these dream companies where you aspire to be. But let's just say if you found this video useful, make sure to hit that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Comment down below if you have any questions or concerns. I will be responding to each and every single one of you, and make sure you tell me what you want me to make my next videos on so I can deliver to you guys. Subscribe for more career and personal finance, entrepreneurship, and career in general. Until then, take care and I'll see you in the next one.